This is Ralph with 13 Peppers, and in today's video I'm going to show you my spin on some good old-fashioned pumpkin butter. Now, to start off this recipe, what I perceive to be the most important part is going to be the pepper. Now right here I have 3 dried habanero pods, and I personally dry my peppers just to help with storage. This year I had 500 different pepper plants, and right now I have 2.5 freezers full of just peppers. Nothing else in there besides peppers, and it is absolutely full. My overflow and other things too, I actually do dry my peppers, and I dry them as a whole pod. I don't actually crush them up or anything like that until I'm ready to make powders or seasonings or what, but I do dry them as a whole pod. Now the drying process I use is pretty basic and pretty easy because I use a Nesco Dehydrator, and as you can tell right here, I have a bunch of Zimbabwe black pods here which have just been dried, and then I'll be able to bag them up, and then you can store those things for years without a problem. The other thing that you can do once you got the dried pods in the storage, because I mean, it's a lot easier, is you can go ahead and grind them up into powders. And on a bunch of my different recipes I cook for myself and whatnot, I actually use a grinder. I have used a bunch of different ones in the past. The one that I actually prefer right here is a Krups. And what I'll do is I'll link everything in the description below of everything that I use here. But what I do is I just go ahead, I use the Krups here. Now with the pods, before I grind them, I do take the top of the stem off because I do dry them with the stems. I really don't prefer those in my mixture, but I go ahead and I take the stems off. I plop them into the grinder here, and we'll go ahead and grind it up. Now once I put the pods in the grinder, I just go ahead, I slap on the top here. Now one thing I do before I grind these up is typically I would not grind them up here in my recording studio just because I don't have proper airflow or ventilation. When you do grind peppers, there is a chance of getting that airborne, and you want to be in a well ventilated area to go ahead and grind peppers. Otherwise you're going to be crying a lot because the pepper powder will get into your eyes. But we'll go ahead and we'll get these ground up. Now once these grind up, I do want to wait a second before I go ahead and take the lid off to try to let some of that pepper airborne, that the particulates and everything, go ahead and settle down. But let's go ahead, let's open it up. And that gives us a bunch of nice powder down there in the bottom. So go ahead, we're going to dump that into the container. And there we got powder ready for our recipe. Now for the recipe here, let's get started. We're going to start out with 15 ounces or a can or shredded pumpkin or whatever, but roughly 15-16 ounces of pumpkin. Now with this recipe, I do prefer pawpaw meat. I know not everybody has that. I have a bunch of it frozen from my garden this year, and I'll link a video to that at the end of this, but that is a wonderful tasting stuff. But other than that, just go ahead and use some pumpkin. We're going to use a 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar. I have 1/8 teaspoon of clove, ground of course. I have 1/8 teaspoon of cinnamon. Okay. I have a 1/4 cup of dark brown molasses, or just dark molasses. Okay. I have the powder of the 3 peppers. And then I want to add roughly 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Now nutmeg is something I do not buy ground just because it loses its flavor real fast. I actually buy the whole nutmeg. As you can tell, this is actually a 1/2 of one here, but I actually use it, and then I go ahead and then I grate it. And why I say 1/4 to an eighth to a fourth of a teaspoon this is kind of just an estimate when you're doing this. But from a nutmeg aspect, this is the best flavored nutmeg you get, is when you can actually do this yourself. Now with all that together, we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna turn the heat up to medium. We're gonna stir this up, okay? Now what we want to do with the butter and everything here, because it will melt, and that's why we want to use the pumpkin puree and everything like that, is we want a nice smooth consistency. When the sugar melts and everything else, it's actually going to become a lot more liquid and easy, and we want to kind of take some of that liquid out so it becomes thicker so we can actually spread it really nice on toast or whatever else that we want to do. So we're going to go ahead, heat it up, keep stirring it until we get it to the thickness that we want. Now as this starts to heat up, this is going to actually start bubbling at the bottom, and you'll see it kind of lifting up your pumpkin here. And what you want to do, or it's actually what I do, is every so often I just stir it to make sure that it's not going to actually create a big pocket of air and like explode out all over the place. And also too, because I want to try to take some of the moisture out, I don't want the bottom to lose all the moisture and burn on here. Even though this is non-stick, I don't know, it's still something in the back of my head that could happen. But every once in a while I just stir it, and it turns out good. Okay, at this particular point, I feel I've doubled its consistency. It's probably been about 12-13 minutes since I've started this and just been stirring it. So I think I got it to the consistency I want. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead, turn this off, and take this off the heat and let it cool. Now once you have that cooled down and everything, you can go ahead and put it in a bowl, and you can serve it even a little bit warm. You can put it in the refrigerator overnight, snack on it however you want to, not a problem. Now this is the consistency I like, and what I've suggested in all my videos and everything else is take what you see here and make it your own. If this is not smooth enough for you, go ahead, stick it in a food processor, get that thing really, really smooth. You can also change up the flavors a little bit. You can actually take out the cinnamon, you can add pumpkin pie spice. You can also add lemon juice, like a tablespoon of lemon juice in here when you're actually doing the cooking process. You can add a little bit of everything. If you don't like the brown sugar, you can go ahead and add honey if you want to. Try it that way. But this is what I actually like. And normally I would go ahead, I would try this on toast, but it's 8 o'clock at night. Don't have toast like I do in the morning, but that would make it snack time, so we're gonna go ahead and try it on a cracker. So go ahead, put it on the cracker, and here we go. Just like the feel, the taste, and everything else on it. So now, pumpkin is not normally how I make this. There's no pumpkins a lot more available than what I use. I actually use the meat from my pawpaw my pawpaw trees, because I actually save that and I store that and freeze those in 2-cup bags every year so I can always use it. That's the way I prefer it. Now, if you're not familiar with what a pawpaw is, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna link it here at the end of the video, and you can actually watch me go over pawpaw processing and everything else. So with that, I want to say thank you very much for watching the video. If you like what you've seen here today, please subscribe to the channel. It does help me out greatly. You can follow me on a bunch of different social platforms, or you can actually head to my website, which is 13peppersbyralph.com. There I actually post videos, recipes, and a bunch of other stuff that I am doing and also selling. So, but with that, I want to say once again, thank you very much, and you all have a very, very good day.